I think a lot of times what we do is we become defined by something, some brokenness, some difficult situation, like me, the loss of my mother when I was 5 years old, and how that impacted wrecked our family. And there's a lot of pain associated with that. But, I think what happens is when you submit yourself to God and you don't define yourself by that brokenness or the challenges, then you start to see on the other side of that sort of the eternal value of a physical loss, the eternal value of a physical challenge that you've faced or an emotional challenge that you've faced.
Welcome to the Daron Earlewine podcast, where we awaken you to become who you were born to be. Here's your host, Daron Earlewine.
Hey, welcome back to episode 9 of the Daron Earlewine podcast. The crowd goes wild. Once again, studio audience off the hook here in the lush, huge studio we've put together here for the Daron Earlewine podcast, also known as the corner of our office. Anyway, hey, it's so good to be back with you guys. Stoked to talk about awakening yourself through the power of servanthood today. That's where we're going on the episode 9 of the Daron Earlewine podcast. Thank you so much for downloading this, whether it be on YouTube or through your podcast platform that you use for audio podcasts. And once again, I just want to ask you, if you would, take the time to give us a review, give us a like, a share through the podcast, to subscribe, whether it be here on an audio podcast or right here on YouTube if you're watching the podcast. That's one of the ways that we can grow and help continue to awaken more and more people to become what they are born to be. And so for those of you that have done that, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We were really, really impressed and really pleased and just humbled this past week to see the numbers of the downloads just going through the roof. And it means you're telling people about it. You're sharing this with friends, with family, people that need this kind of awakening in their life. And thank you so much. It means a ton. Today, we're sitting down with a good friend of mine, Mitch Davis. And Mitch is one of the founders of Mission Uprising, and they do some just phenomenal stuff. We're going to talk about it today. It's going to inspire you and just talk a lot about the awakening experience that happens through the power of servanthood. And my life mission, I feel like God gave me many years ago. I was speaking at a camp in Kentucky. I may have told this story before. And I met the pastor that actually led my entire family to Jesus. His name was Willard Metz, which is a great old dude name, Willard, right? Willard Metz. And Pastor Metz, he led my mom to Christ. My mom led her mom to Christ and her mom to Christ. And then my dad came to faith. And then about 25 years after that, his mom and dad came to faith. And all of it leads back to Willard Metz, who was the pastor for a while at All Belong Wesleyan Church in All Belong, Illinois. And I'd never met the man because I came along a while after that and we had moved. Maybe I met him when I was like 1. And I'm speaking at this camp in Kentucky. And unbeknownst to me, I'm introduced to this guy. And he's like, I'm Pastor Willard Metz. And I'm like, holy buckets, you are responsible for the kingdom coming into both sides of my family. It was this really just cool moment. I was speaking there to a bunch of teens. And I go back to my room and I'm journaling about meeting Pastor Metz. And it was just a cool time. And not audibly, but as clear as day, this sentence dropped into my brain. I was writing about the idea of my life and life mission and how meaningful this night was. And the sentence, awaken the world to the righteousness of Jesus Christ, popped into my head like a full-blown sentence. And I wrote it down. And that moment changed my life because the moment to meet Pastor Metz and just seeing God's faithfulness to our family, it was in a moment of awakening. And that word that God gave me to awaken the world to the righteousness of Jesus Christ, for me, has been so shaping because the process, the reality of being awakened to something is such a beautiful thing because it's not that you've necessarily discovered something new or that no one's ever known before. It was something that has been there all the time that you were asleep to. But you woke up and now this experience is bringing you to a new understanding of life that you were dark to before. And that happens when you understand the righteousness of Christ, meaning the right relationship you can have with God and what he brings to you. And that for me is so much about helping people understand what it means to see your spiritual DNA come to life, being awakened to the reality that you have been given everything you need to serve God and to live through your knowledge of God through the spiritual DNA he's placed within you, that you can actually participate in the divine nature and escape the corruption of the world caused by evil desires. That's what 2 Peter tells us, chapter 1. And this awakening to the reality of who God is and how uniquely he's made you, it changes everything about today, about tomorrow, about yesterday. It is an absolute revolutionary awakening. And that's what I want to see you experience time and time again in your life. And what I found is sometimes spiritual awakenings, they happen by, I don't know if I could say by accident, but you stumble upon them. That can happen. But what I find most often is they happen as we are seeking truth. As there's momentum and inertia to our life, is we begin to move, and then God begins to bring us to these moments of awakening. And Mitch Davis in his interview is going to talk about that process, and what they do with their ministry is to set up opportunities to allow you to experience servanthood-based moments, whether it's building a house in Mexico, or it's taking your kids on a wild heart camp, weekend experience, is seeking after servanthood-based experiences that become awakenings. We're going to talk about that today, and I'm excited to jump into that. Before we do, I want to share a couple things. I want to jump into the mailbag. I want to thank Betsy for reaching back out. Betsy reached out a couple weeks ago about jumping into spiritual DNA. She's in the process right now going through the course. If you've not had a chance to take spiritual DNA, the online course, you can do so if you just go to spiritualdna.me. That's where you can get the course. And you'll go through 5 different assessments, all the video teaching from me with all the sessions. And it's a process to truly awaken you to become who God's created you to be. And Betsy's in process right now. And she reached out. She said, Daron, I've been listening to the podcast. And she says, and during one of the podcasts, you talk about that the 5 people you spend the most time with shape you the most. And that's not a quote original with me. Maybe you've heard people say, show me your friends, I'll show you your future. But the five people that you spend the most time with, they are the sum total of who you're becoming. And what Betsy says is, as she's been going through spiritual DNA, she realized that actually what's crazy is that this past year of the quarantine and not actually going to work has been a major blessing in which God is using to awaken her to a new reality. And here's why. She says she's been in a job for over a decade, and the 5 people she spends the most time with at that job are somewhat toxic. It's a negative gossip field type environment. And she said it wasn't until she got out of that environment and began to think about, who are these 5 people that I surround myself with most? And are they the kind of people that I want to become? Are they living the kind of life that I want to be becoming, walking into? And Betsy came to the point, she said, no, they're not. And what she's realizing is this time to be away from these people as she's working from home because of coronavirus, is she's becoming more and more who God's created her to be, and she's realizing it's because she's taken these relationships, or they have been taken out of her life. What I love about is God is beginning to give Betsy a new vision. She's praying for a new opportunity, a new job, a new place that she can step into. And she says this, I love this. She says, why am I sharing all this? Because I want to go through this spiritual DNA course and see what God might reveal and where he might lead. Listen to this. This is beautiful. I don't want to just exist. I want to live passionately each day, making a difference for God. Maybe that will happen in my current workplace if I learn about my gifts and passions, or maybe it will lead me somewhere new, but I'm excited to start the journey and see where it leads. Betsy, thanks so much for listening to the podcast. Thanks for reaching out. And if you have a moment this week, would you do me a favor and pray for Betsy? Pray for Betsy that God would open the door to the next opportunity, or to the hidden opportunity right in front of her with the job she has, that she would move from living and just existing to truly living with purpose and with peace and with passion. And let's join together and pray for breakthrough and for great opportunities and for an awakening for Betsy and for the 100, if not thousands of people that are listening that are just like her. And it may be you, that you would have the faith to believe that God has created you on purpose and for a purpose, and you would seek after that. So Betsy, thanks for reaching out. We appreciate it. Keep us updated, and let's join together as a community And let's pray for Betsy. All right. Hey, I want to hit us with, let's see, we need some kind of a transition here. What do we need? Crickets? No, that's not high energy. We can't do the dream chimes yet. Scary? No, we don't need scary sound effects. Listen, here we go. This is a fun song. Here we go. We're transitioning to talk about the interview this week. This will be our transition interview music. Kind of sounds like the Foo Fighters, but not quite as good. But it's a good sound. It's a good little theme song here from the Roadcaster. Thank you, Roadcaster. It's a good kick drum sound there. Whoever EQ'd that, it's good. All right, no one cares about that except me. Here's what I want to hit you with today as we get ready to transition into this interview with Mitch Davis. I got 3 statements. They all alliterate with the letter P because, of course, they do. Everything has to alliterate. But here's what Mitch is going to take you through is as we seek purpose through these awakening moments, we have to let 3 things guide us. And he says it like this. We got to pursue purpose that's greater than profit. Purpose that's greater than profit. Now, if you run a company or you're in a leadership role, that's something that I want you thinking about in your leadership role and in the leadership capacity that God's put you in is, do you seek purpose for yourself, for your company, and for your employees more than profit? Is there a purpose each day that's greater than that? Are you involved in leadership that's not just trying to hit the bottom line, but it's actually trying to create change and awakening in the people that you lead? And as you look at that, and even in your own life, is as you're trying to seek out who has God created me to be, how do I step into that reality, your purpose has to be greater than profit. If right now you wake up and most of your life is just trying to hit the next sales goal or get the next promotion or have enough money to do this or to add this on the house, if profit is your number one motivational factor, your purpose is too small, friend. God has not created you to be a money-making machine. Money's not bad. God had figured that out. He gave us the opportunity to make money, and I'm down with John Wesley, right? I want to make all I can, save all I can, give all I can. Money can be a phenomenal tool. It creates options, not against having money. I'm against money being our number one purpose. Jesus says, right, that we can't serve 2 gods, right? We can't serve God and money. Our purpose has to be more than profit if we're going to become who we were born to be. The next thing is this purpose. We've got to have a purpose greater than pleasure. We've got to have a purpose greater than pleasure. Solomon, David's son in the Old Testament, he is said to be the wisest man that ever lived except for Jesus. And in Ecclesiastes, Solomon talks about that he went on this search for meaning and purpose. And he says he denied himself no earthly pleasure. He had all the money, all the fame, all the power, all the wisdom, and he went nuts for a while and did anything and everything he wanted and sought after pleasure. And he gets into the book, and he says, listen, this was all found. I found this wanting. This was empty. Not that the moments weren't great of pleasure, but that was not what I was created for. And as you're seeking purpose in your life, you've got to seek purpose that's greater than pleasure. And I think often what happens is maybe if we are seeking profit and it works and we get a little money, we get a little momentum in our life, we begin to find things that bring us pleasure. And God's not against things that bring us pleasure. I remember talking years ago when I was pastoring at a church here in town, and I talked about how much I had a dream of getting a hot tub. I wanted a hot tub. I mean, the bottom line is there's not anything in life. If you add hot water and bubbles moving around you, it's just better. You know what I'm saying? Like your dog dies, what could make that a little bit better? Hot tub. Okay. You lose your job. What could make that night a little bit better? Hot tub. Okay. Let's say it's the best day ever. Let's say you win the championship. You know what I mean? You win state in your football team, baseball. I don't care. Badminton. You win the badminton championship. Badminton's a fun game, by the way. I don't know if you guys have played badminton lately, but it's kind of awesome. That's not a joke. I mean that. Badminton is a great sport. But let's say you win the championship, okay? What makes celebrating the championship better? A hot tub. And God's not against hot tubs. And so I made this illustration that it's not about the stuff. It's not about, that we get to do fun stuff. Is that the purpose? Now, the crazy thing about that is that somebody who had a hot tub that had realized that it actually wasn't that great, they didn't want it anymore, they asked me if I wanted their hot tub, and I said, yes, I do want your used hot tub. And guess what? It brought a lot of pleasure to my life, but it didn't fulfill it. And I think about, what if I had been working overtime and slaving away and saying no to the more important things in life so I could make enough money so that I could buy a hot tub? Because if I had the hot tub, I'd have that pleasure and life would be there. That I would be fulfilled. I can tell you what, there were some cool moments looking at the stars, sitting in the hot tub, but it didn't fill my soul with meaning and purpose. I've been able to go on a handful of really fun vacations over the past decade or so. I've got to go to the Bahamas, beautiful. I've been to Jamaica, great. Mexico, LA, New York. I've been around the world, and it's fun. But I can tell you this is it was just kind of the icing on the cake. If it was the cake, if my whole purpose in life was to pursue that pleasure, I'd be empty. Because the hot tub or the vacation lasted for a couple of days, but then it's Monday, and then it's just Tuesday again, and then it's every day in and day out. And if I don't have something greater than pleasure that is driving my life, I don't have a purpose big enough to fulfill my soul. And the last thought I have this, and we're going to jump in the interview with Mitch, is your purpose has to be greater than personal. You see that Jesus has created us in his image. And one of the things we find out about God that's kind of crazy to think about is that Jesus is the most powerful. He's the most creative. He is the wisest. He's the best teacher. We can keep going on and on and on about all the great, powerful, amazing, holy things that Jesus is. But here's the mind-blowing thing. He is also the most humble servant ever. And that scrambles our brains sometimes, because you're like, how could he be the greatest and most powerful, but also the most humble and most servant-hearted? We know from the scriptures that it says that Jesus didn't see equality with God as something to be grasped, but made himself nothing, emptied himself to become obedient, to become a human being, and then become obedient even to the cross, to give his own life for you and for me, to serve us. That the greatest purpose that Jesus was sent to do was to serve others. And then he invites us to have the same attitude as Christ, that our purpose is most greatly fulfilled when it's not personal, when it's for others. And Mitch is going to unpack that, of how many of these experiences they've been on, and that they create as a ministry that invite people into these awakening moments of servanthood, where they realize that the purpose in their life, it's way bigger than personal. It's way bigger than pleasure. It's way bigger than profit. But it's to partner alongside Jesus and see faith and hope and love change people's lives and create the future. You're going to love this interview. I love what Mitch is doing. And when we get back from it, I am going to hit you with a last challenge here on the Daron Earlewine podcast. Let's jump in right now to our interview with Mitch Davis from missionuprising.com. And I pray that this moment of listening would be an awakening to a servant-hearted life. Let's jump in our interview with Mitch Davis. Hey, excited to sit down face-to-face here in person with one of my good friends, Mitch Davis. Mitch, we've known each other for, I would feel like at least a decade, maybe 15 years or so.
About 15 years, yeah.
And you are the founder and president director of Mission Uprising. We want to get into that and unpack what you guys do, because I've always loved everything that Mission Uprising puts together. But one thing I'm excited about talking about and digging into your story and really the pursuit of God's call in your life is something that from day one when I met you that we really had a connection on, is just your passion to see people's life change through serving other people.
Yeah. And
how that experience, and that truly an awakening experience that happens through serving others.
Yeah.
And that's so much of what you guys are a part of. I'm excited just to have you on the podcast and jump into the story.
Thanks for letting me come with you, and I enjoy it. It's fun.
So let's let people, I guess, in a little bit on exactly what Mission Uprising is and what you guys are accomplishing, so we can at least get that context.
Yeah. So Mission Uprising is really all about, so we exist since about 17 years, since about 2002. We really started getting together, and it came out of when John Eldredge wrote Wild at Heart.
Yeah.
We went to one of his first boot camps. We out in Colorado. We got his book from our boss, and he gave us a chance to read through it. It was an early version, and we were just moved by it. So we went to that, and it really changed our lives. I think one of the big things that happened out of reading it was that it related to us as guys. And so that's where Mission Uprising started. A group of guys went out to Colorado. We had an incredible experience. It changed our lives. The way we viewed things was different. And we came back because we wanted to offer it to other people. And John he said, look, take my stuff, go create outposts for the kingdom. And so super creative. Indiana Outpost came out of that. Yeah. And we came back and started doing it. And it was first with guys, just to get guys to go and have that experience of a Wild at Heart boot camp. I know a lot of people have read that over the years. Sure. Yeah. It came out in 2001. And, but we came back and started doing that just as a group. And then from there, Mission Uprising went into doing father-daughter camps, father-son camps, a women's weekend that's very similar to that. And we still do all of those right now. And then we grew into the home builds. I mean, what you were talking about a little bit ago, and I think that's where we really started first talking. We went to Mexico on our first home build with Homes of Hope. It was back around 2010. And that was really a life-changing experience for me. I think the thing that happened during that woke me up a lot. And that was sort of a catalyst moment of seeing a little boy. There was a little boy, lived in a car with his mom down the street from this house that we were at. And I had a 5-year-old, my son Nick was with us at the time. And throughout the day, we got to see this family. We noticed that they were sitting in the car, and she was pregnant, and she had an infant and this 5-year-old. And we asked the mom, and she said, yeah, they live in the car, and they're over here helping us today, just wanting to help out. Her husband works in the United States, and he can't come back all the time. He comes back about once a month. And so during the day, my son Nick was playing in the dirt with this little boy. Paco was under the table playing with my son. I took this picture of the two boys underneath the table, and they both have these huge smiles. I have that picture at home. And I realized, hey, these two kids are exactly the same. They just happen to be born in two totally different circumstances. Yeah. And it broke me. And to me, it was, one, I have to do something about this. And two, was that when people see something real and they look it in the eyes, whether it's poverty or hunger or a broken person, that's something that wakes you up. And I went back and said, we have to do more. And so Mission Uprising has grown into more because we were drawn into more by what happened for us in those experiences. And, as I think back to that moment, and my son, I talked to him a lot about it, is that, those two boys were exactly the same in terms of what they liked to do. They were exactly the same in terms of what attracted them to, playing in the dirt with a hammer, whatever it happened to be. Yeah. And I think what we happen to do most of the time is get caught up in our worlds. We get caught up in what we're doing, and we don't think about all the other people and what they're walking through and what they're experiencing. I think God wants us to look outside of ourselves. And if something's not awakening us to that, we'll typically just stay in our groove. And, even something like COVID has been significant for a lot of people to get awakened to something more. And so we really look at everything that we do today is create these awakening moments that can be catalysts for change, to view your life differently, to maybe walk into what God has for you in a bigger way. And it seems to be getting more and more as the years go by, and as I get, more years under my belt, kids get older, that kind of stuff.
I love it, Mitch. And the thing that I think always struck me is when we first, got connected is now, full time is what you do is your work, with Mission Uprising and the camps, the Hope, Homes for Hope. But the thing that always stood out to me when I first met you is that you were in the corporate world. Yeah. And we're working to really a lot of it. I think when we first got connected, you guys were just getting what became the Super Serve Challenge off the ground with Defenders here locally. And but you've worked in the corporate sector, but you've always had Mission Uprising. You were developing these things, I guess you could say, in your spare time. Mm-hmm. And I love that because I think a lot of times people think, I can't step into something that God may be putting in my heart to do because it's not going to be my full-time gig, or I don't have time to do that kind of stuff. I got kids, whatever. But when I met you, you had kids, you had a wife, you had a mortgage, you had a full-time job, you were in the but you found time, or you made time to make these pursuits a priority, and now they've become your career. I guess, what was it that drove you? And I think it's probably some of the story you just told is what the answer is going to be, but why did you like take the time to see these things start? Like, or how'd you find the time?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think initially it was because something happened for us. I mean, I think that's what happens with most of us. Something happens for us. It awakens us to something different. We start to view things in a different way. And then we get a commitment to wanting to offer it to somebody else. For me, and I know for the other guys that went with us on that first trip to Colorado, and then we followed that up with a fishing trip to Canada, just to kind of look at the world through a different lens. And when we came back from that and wanted to offer that up to other people, we knew we would have to do it on the fringes. The beauty of the situation was we worked for a guy who said, look, if you guys are going to do this kind of work and you're doing something for other people, I will support it. You take the time to go and do it when you need to. And we were busy. We were a growing company, a fast growing company. We were successful and busy, and we were all leading our parts of the business. But we had to do it in the fringes, and we did it collectively and made it work. But it was all because we wanted to offer something to somebody else and to other people the way it was offered to us. Paying it forward to some degree, but also there's just this passion in your heart when something stirs you at that level, kind of like what's happened with you in your life. I think we talked about that over the years, is that you can't not do it.
Yeah.
And that's what we chose to do. And that has shifted. So maybe it was in the 10% in the fringes, and we did it on the weekends at night. And, the beauty of it was that our wives knew it. They were excited about it. I think part of the reason why we had our kids come into the father-son and father-daughter camp is they wanted to be a part of it. But when they saw dads getting connected with their kids, they were drawn into that. And when my wife, Julie, saw other women coming alive and really becoming something more that they maybe had lost over the years, they were drawn in. So I think that's what happens is people experience something and get drawn in. And we did it while we were in the corporate world. And I think what happened was it got too big for us to just do it on the fringes. Yeah. And that was kind of when we started doing some of the Super Service Challenge stuff and building a lot of houses. And I was doing more of that type of work, more full time. But that's been the shift.
What I see, Mitch, and we talk about it, in our spiritual DNA, course. It's the power of passion, right? Mm-hmm. Is that word passion literally means suffering. And I think when something captures your heart in a way that it becomes an area of passion, you will suffer for it. Yeah. And if that means you're going to work nights and weekends and figure it out, it's like, and I think so often is when we don't have something that we're actually passionate about, we can just pacify ourselves with wasting time on a bunch of junk.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? I love to watch football games. I watched a bunch yesterday, right? I mean, right. So I'm not saying anything against finding things that are recreational, but when you find something that brings you passion, and I think the greatest part is when we find things that give us passion that actually do bring good to the lives of others, mm-hmm. that make a difference in the world, then I think it makes every ounce of sacrifice worth it. But it's finding that kind of cause, and that's what you guys did. Did you have any aspirations as you were doing some of those first camps, like some point maybe this will become my life's work, or was it just like, this is the right thing to do now, we're going to go after it and see what happens? Yeah,
that was exactly it. I don't think we had a big vision other than we'll do this as long as the Lord gives us the opportunity to do it, and we are, and people keep coming. And that's kind of what we've always said since we started. As long as people are showing up, mm-hmm. we'll keep doing this. Yeah. Because if it's changing people's lives and offering something, then we want to do it. I mean, and likewise, just going back to what you were saying a minute ago, we said this with companies with a mission as well, which is a purpose greater than profit. So in business, you're not going to be motivated for the long haul unless your purpose is greater than just the win. And you're not going to be motivated as an individual for the long haul if your purpose is just, let's go have fun, let's have recreation and vacation every, couple times a year, once a year, whatever. At some point, you're going to get burnt out. You'll get worn out from just doing that. And the satisfaction won't come unless something is feeding that empty space inside of us all that really is that God-shaped hole. Or I hate to use those terms that people use all the time, but its reality is that fills it. And then we're drawn to it. We want to keep filling it. And so that's what happened to us. But it wasn't what happened. Rather than having a big vision that we tried to build into, we had a heart vision that just kept growing and growing and growing. And then as each time we would have to sacrifice something more. Like, when we got to the point where we had to sacrifice being in the corporate world or had to sacrifice some time to do those other things, you made a choice, and then you saw the outcomes, and the outcomes were worth the sacrifice every time.
Mitch, I think so often on the podcast, we always take people back to the beginnings of their life, because so often I see that the seeds of passion so often have been planted, deep in our life. Sometimes, even way prior to when we'd even begin to look of wow, God was actually at work in that thing when I was a kid. Yeah. And oftentimes what we find is that they're actually seeds of pain. Right. Pain that we've gone through in our life, and God, and when we begin to entrust that pain to God, He actually can redeem and refine that as a place for a great passion. And I see some of that in some of your story of some of the pain that your family went through as a kid, losing your mother. I want you to unpack some of that story for us. Yeah. But do you see God at work in that? Do you see some of the passion that you have now to see, sons and fathers and dads and daughters come together? Do you feel like some of that was planted in you through this pain of what you went through with your family?
Yeah, of course it is. I noticed on your wall up here you have Dallas Willard's book, The Divine Conspiracy. Yeah. When I walked in, one of the most powerful books that I've read, and in there, he's talking about that. He's talking about redemption. And I think a lot of times what we do is we become defined by some brokenness, some difficult situation, like me, the loss of my mother when I was 5 years old, and how that impacted wrecked our family. And there's a lot of pain associated with that. But, I think what happens is when you submit yourself to God and you don't define yourself by that brokenness or the challenges, then you start to see on the other side of that sort of the eternal value of a physical loss, the eternal value of a physical challenge that you've faced, or an emotional challenge that you've faced. And as long as we can see beyond ourselves and look at it more in terms of how it would affect other people. So for me, for example, I could live out of clinging to the fact that I lost my mother, and that could define my whole life. The reality is that created a real compassion for mothers and sons and husbands and wives and women and their hearts. I mean, this next weekend I'll be speaking at our women. It's uncomfortable to go stand in front of a bunch of women and share, but it's a passion that's important to me, that they get their hearts back. And that comes out of the fact that when you lose something so critical to the heart of a young man, a young boy, as a mother, then if you look beyond yourself later when you grow up, you can't do that when you're little, but when you grow up, you can see the value that needs to be offered to other people who are facing those challenges, those same kinds of things. So yeah, that's for sure one of them. And I think the other one is, and maybe it's not even my own personal wounds and brokenness, but as I look at my dad's a fire chief, an ambulance director, and if there was something done in our city, saving a life or raising money for the muscular dystrophy telethon, it all happened at the fire station or under his watch. And in that, you saw other people hurting. And in seeing other people hurting, that pain, I felt it as a kid, I think, but that also comes from the experiences you have. A sensitive kid who loses their mom, you notice things. And so now you notice when somebody's making a difference in people's lives. And so, that invited me into, I can't imagine not serving other people because that's what I grew up with. But also I think that yearning to serve comes out of, what you deal with, what you suffer from. And people say, I don't want to suffer. I don't want to deal with, challenges or issues in my life. And neither do I. Sure. I mean, I don't think any of us want those things, but we will be dealt those things. But what are we going to do with them, right? I mean, so I hope that what I've done is seen them from an eternal perspective instead of just from my perspective.
Well, it sounds like, I remember a mentor of mine said right before, I think it was before that Julie and I had kids, or he talked about, that in parenting so often, more is caught than is taught,
That's so true.
And I'm sure that your dad taught you a lot of good lessons, but it sounds like just being around him, you caught compassion and servanthood for others, for the community. I mean, that you almost couldn't miss that, right?
Couldn't miss it. And I think the guys that he worked with, one of the things that I was thinking about this the other day, the chaplain for the fire station, Brian King, and my parents would go out and I'd stay at the fire station because I want to hang out with the guys, and shoot pool and slide down the pole and do whatever. If I got the chance. Back then you could still ride on the fire trucks to a run or whatever.
That's like a kid's playground.
Oh man,
it was for a little boy, right?
I loved it. Loved that place. Drink the nasty coffee with the guys, and eat their old burnt chili or whatever it is they thought was awesome. But at the end of the day, a guy like that said, hey, I remember a couple times him saying, let's go grab a burger and go to Little Greasy Spoon next door. And he was speaking to me. He saw me needing that. And you need a guy who's not your dad sort of speaking into you sometimes. But so you learn a lot through those experiences. You absorb a lot through the experiences, and then other people, take the risk or at least take the responsibility to speak into your heart as a kid. And I think that happened to me as well.
How much is that? I guess what was interesting to me right now, and we didn't necessarily have this planned in the podcast, but this is where my brain's going right now, is that I feel like so often right now, Mitch, is, and you guys have dad camp, you have father-son camp, everything you've done with, for the heart, the Wild at Heart, kind of structure from Eldridge's book. And so much of Eldridge's writing is about, men uncovering a biblical masculinity.
Yeah.
And I feel like so much of that is under attack, in our society. And it's almost like, if you watch, I'm always caught off guard. Not caught off, I guess I look for it now. It's like when my kids are watching, some Disney Channel show or something, it's like the dad is always a bumbling idiot, right? That just gets in the way or fouls everything up. And it's like he's always the butt of every joke. But it's like, as I talk to so many men who are successful, who are raising strong families, who are making a difference in the community, it's like you go back and you hear about these men, of character and of servanthood that sat down and spoke truth into young men's lives. And I think that role is something that is under attack in our culture, because I feel like the enemy of our lives, right? The devil knows that if he can take men out from being the leaders that God's called them to be, the servant leaders that God has called them to be in their homes and their communities, everything begins to unravel. Are you seeing encouraging things as you're doing what you're doing with Man Camp and with the father-son camp? Are you seeing men step into that? Kind of take us into that world.
No, that's a good statement. I think two things I'm seeing. One, I don't know if you listen much to John Mark Comer's podcast. He's pastor out in Oregon, and one of the things that I see is he talks about being an apprentice to Jesus. We talk about apprenticeship, right?
Yeah.
And that really struck me. I think Pete Scazzaro talks a little bit about that too in the Emotionally Healthy Church. Is we need to be apprentices to Jesus. Well, what's that look like? It looks like spending time with him. It looks like watching what he does and mirroring it. And I think our sons, boys, girls all do that. They watch their parents and they match and mirror. They apprentice us, regardless of whether we think they are or not. Yeah. They're looking at us. And what I'm seeing in men, or at least the ones that choose to step out and go to these events, is that they're willing to put it out there a little bit. A lot of guys aren't willing to put it out there. They feel comfortable at work. I felt comfortable at work. I felt comfortable in corporate America. I knew what to do. I knew how to win. I knew how to make that work for me. But I was uncomfortable with my little kids because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know exactly how to do that. But I think what we have to do, and I think I see this happening more with some of the younger guys that I'm encountering, is they're leaning into that. They're saying, no, I want that again. I want an older, more experienced man who knows how to raise kids to lean in to us. And, we've got a young couple that just asked us to counsel them in getting married next year. And, they're leaning in, they're saying, hey, help us walk through this. And I don't think we kind of drifted away from that for a long time. But I see these guys come to father-son camp or father-daughter camp, initially uncomfortable about hanging out with their daughter for a couple of days and how am I going to relate to her, and then, 24 hours later we're doing a 50s dance and they're spinning their daughter and learning dance moves, and they're getting muddy and sliding down a slide. I saw a guy, he's doing flips off of the little swing at Spring Hill Camp, or they're running through the woods and chasing their daughters with, war paint on their face. And the girls are having a blast. They're like, my dad is actually fun. He is not this stick in the mud that I've gotten used to at home, who cannot get away from his computer, can't get away from his phone. And because it calls to us. We get emails at 11 o'clock at night. So it's very difficult to detach from the world that we've gotten ingrained in and then attach to our families. But I see guys really wanting to do that, turning the phone off, talking about that solitude. John Eldridge has a great little silence and solitude app, and John Mark Comer talks a lot about taking that silence, unplug the phone, don't use it as your alarm clock, set it in the charger downstairs and connect with your family again and come alive. And I think that's a lot of what we're talking about. And these dads and daughters, I had girls, my daughter's 19. She's been going to father-daughter camp since she was 6.
Really?
And some of her buddies got up on stage last year, and they're all standing up there talking about how father-daughter camp has connected them with their dads. And they have this relationship now, that has driven things like, well, my daughter and we went hiking yesterday in the afternoon. Nobody else in our family wanted to go because she and I love to get muddy and go hike and just mess around. And we went. And I don't think a lot of dads and daughters, unless they have that relationship, would just choose to go do that. But they've invested over the years going to these things. And so that's one thing. I think the second one is, with if a woman goes to something like the Well, we've got an event next weekend, and kind of gets that passion back, gets that energy back, isn't afraid. And then the guy has gone to something and he's no longer afraid. He's not carrying all this fear of relating with his wife, and they start to connect again. Then you start to see a healthier relationship between parents. And then the kids are like, whoa, my parents are getting along now. And maybe we've got something here, and they start to feel more comfortable. So that's what I start to see happen out of the things that we do. I guess the final thing I would say is even especially on the home builds, when you send somebody to Mexico or the Dominican Republic or wherever to build a home for a family, and they see someone who has suffered in a significant way or they're struggling financially, then they reflect back on their lives after they've all served, they've poured out their heart for another family. They go back home and look at things a little different. It may not change them. Change doesn't always happen just because you make a decision you want to change,
right.
But like that. But it can be the seed of that happening in their lives.
Think about it. I remember we had Paul Young, one of the authors of The Shack, on with us a couple years ago. In this statement, I've said it multiple times, on the podcast, but, he said it took him 50 years to wipe the face of his dad off the face of God.
Oh, wow.
And, had a very, very difficult relationship with his dad. And I think so many people are stuck there, that they had, a very negative relationship with their father. And it's difficult to hear about that we have a loving heavenly Father, and we talk about God being our Father, which He is. But when the connection to your earthly father is damaged or broken, that becomes a very difficult bridge to walk across.
Yeah.
And I just, it just encourages me to think about all these, these daughters or these sons that have gone to, these Mission Uprising camps, you know what I mean? And the advantage that they're going to have to be able to see and understand the heart of God, because they're going to have a dad that was there, that was present, that was faithful, that was engaged.
Yeah.
Such a gift, and not just to them, but even to the future generations that they'll raise.
Yeah, that's true. And I think a lot of them go in with a bad relationship or a broken relationship, not necessarily bad, but a broken relationship or a non-existent relationship with their dads. So many father wounds. If you've read Wild at Heart,
yeah.
Father wounds, mother wounds, those things are there. The world delivers wounds. It happens to deliver them mostly through the people you're closest to, which typically is your parents or your siblings or a significant other, right? So we don't want to bury somebody in that too much, but at the same time, we are going to wound each other as friends and close relationships. That's what happens. And I think if people don't have that relationship with their Heavenly Father to the degree that they're willing to lay down those broken places to Him and really accept that the cross was enough for whatever happened, right? For whatever your dad, my dad says to me, I remember this situation. He said, when your mother died, he said, I had no idea what to do. Think about it. My dad was 38. And when that happened, when you're 38, and that happens, you don't know what to do. No. And I've seen that happen with several friends of mine as well. And you do the best you know how to do with what you came into the world with and your circumstances. Your family of origin plays a lot into it. My dad grew up in poverty. I mean, think about those things. But he did the best he knew how to do, wounded us in the process. But at the same time, if you don't go back and recover some of those things and give them over to God and forgive him, then you're walking in that. I'm the one carrying that, right? If that's the case. So a lot of what we do, especially at an outpost or one of our adventure trips where we're talking to guys and going deep with them, is get into that stuff. And guys don't want to go there, but if they would, they can get that freedom and women the same, right?
I love it. What's coming up in the next, I know that COVID's been, it's been a kick in the teeth for all of us that do live event and gathering type of things for people because we haven't been able to. You guys are starting now just to kind of recover and have some events. What is the regularity of camps? Somebody's listening to the podcast, they go, I got to get on that trip with my daughter or my son. What's the regularity and where can they get the information to know what's going on with the camps and the getaways?
Yeah, so the regularity of it is like typically we'll do a father-son camp in the spring. But since we didn't do it this year, that's coming up here in October. I think October 23rd through the 25th. We do it at Spring Hill Camp down near Seymour. So if they go to our website, missionuprising.com, and look at father-son camp, they can find that date and register for that. So that's coming up. Okay. Father-daughter camp was just passed. It's the end of August. We do that every year here as well. We're getting ready to start one in North Carolina. We do men's retreats and women's retreats in North Carolina, as well as we're starting the father-child camps there. Let's see. We do home builds every year, usually in June or July. Okay. And the point of that is when people are out of school. Yeah. And we do book them at other times during the year, but we try to really layer them on top of each other when people can go. Yeah. And then we do a men's event in the spring and in the fall here and also in North Carolina. And we have a women's retreat. In fact, our women's well is coming up next weekend. So, there's still a little bit of space, but it's coming up like right now, this Thursday. So 17th through the 20th. And then we have one in North Carolina, October 1st through the 4th. Okay. Will be that. And then we're going to do one home build actually coming up here in maybe the first weekend of November. We're going to do a home build. We're trying to get back into Mexico. So that's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but we think we can make it back to build a house.
How long is one of the home builds? Is it just a week?
So it's actually like a Friday through Sunday.
Really?
So somebody leaves, if somebody left on Indiana Thursday morning, they arrive in Mexico after we get into the airport, get them on a tour bus, maybe go to In-N-Out Burger, grab a burger.
You have to.
Yeah, you got to have that.
If the Lord's going to be involved, we're
animal style fries, right? You got to have that. And then we get across the border. Usually in an hour, we're in Mexico and we're on the base, unless we go to Ensenadas another hour south. And then Friday they start building. In between time, we're talking. They're connecting. Have great food. It's a safe base that's has security. Beautiful place. And then so first day the house is under roof. Second day the house is finished usually by 1 o'clock. And then that family, the people, it takes about 20 people to build a house. Normally is how many people we have on a home build. When the house gets done, a small group will go and take the family to buy groceries. We'll collect a little bit of money, buy them some things that they need. And when they come back, it's like the reveal. Remember the big home makeover? Yeah. And so they come back and there's a reveal. So these people maybe were living in a tent or, plywood shack on the dirt, and they come back and the house is done. But what we've also done is now they have a locking door. They have windows. Wow. They have beds. We put curtains and a table and a little stove in there. And then we've taken all the things that we've bought for them and put them on the bed so that they have these toys for their kids, food for a while, and turn the keys over. We pray for them. We go around. It's an incredible thing. Think about this for a second. What would someone have to do for you to be the same level of impact as you just lived in a little box and now you have a home, a concrete floor? What would they have to do for you here to equal that level of impact?
Wow. I can't even put my mind around it.
I can't either. And so that the point is those people remember you forever. And we just went back to a house that we had built 10 years ago. They still had the picture up on the wall of the team that built the house for them because it changed their life. Yeah. Their life will never be the same. because of that experience.
And these are home builds. You can take a kid. You can go with your kids and do this.
Yeah, and the great thing is, so let's say somebody does leave on Thursday, they're back Sunday night.
Wow.
Unless they want to stay in San Diego for a day or so, they're back Sunday, so the kids can go back to school.
You could literally just miss Friday school and go and build a house.
And they're like, "Where'd you go?" I was like, "Well, I was in Mexico on a missions trip and built a house for a family, and now I'm back at school on Monday." That's really what can happen.
Wow. And
so that's incredible. And so we take companies. I mean, sometimes it's an executive team or a leadership team, groups of families. Families, they'll sponsor a house and bring their friends, and schools, Heritage, we bring, from our school, and then other churches. And in fact, we have one person, a teacher from one of the schools, IPS schools here, that has raised enough money. I think I could almost say this for sure, as of now, enough money raised to build a house.
Wow.
As a teacher, through this encouragement of her kids and in an IPS school, which is incredible. So that's going to be happening pretty soon. We'll do that build next year.
I love it. Yeah. I love it. So Mitch, hit us with the website one more time so people can.
Yeah. So they need to go to missionuprising.com, and on there is everything that we do. So if you look through there, not everything is booked because we were supposed to do a women's retreat in Australia this year, and we can't get into. We don't know when we'll be able to get into that country, but everything is on there that people could sign up for, or they can send it. There's a place to click and ask questions, and we have a team that's more than willing to answer any questions. If somebody wants to do a home build and they want to do one on their own, they can let us know about that. But also, if somebody just says, "Look, I want to go, how can I make this happen, even if I have to go with somebody else's team?" Then let us know anyway. Yeah. And we'll try to figure out a way to get them on a build with us. And we'll probably build 15 homes next year if everything stays where we can get into the country. Yeah. We'll be doing that next year as well.
I love it, Mitch. I know I've got 3 boys myself, and I want to get them on a home build because I've done one before, and I know the impact it made on me. And I tell you what, we have great dreams and aspirations, I think, for our kids, and sometimes I think we're afraid to get out of the norm. Mm-hmm. And we got to realize that it's like so often I think we have to put ourselves in uncomfortable and unfamiliar situations so we can discover unusual and extraordinary environments and results. Mm-hmm. And that's what you guys are doing. I love the mission. It's always been a joy. You've enhanced and blessed my life and our friendship throughout the years. And I'm hoping that we can get more connected here in the next couple of years and see if we can't get some more teams heading out in the builds. But it's been a joy. Thanks for joining us today, man.
Thanks, Darren. Appreciate it, man.
All right, Mitch. And we're back. Oh, isn't it always a great journey? Over to interview land. So much fun. Mitch Davis, are you kidding me? Crowd goes wild. Mitch, killer job. I love what you guys are doing with Mission Uprising. Mitch gives you a lot of great resources there. He talks about John Eldridge's book, Wild at Heart. There's another great book that I would encourage you to get into if you're looking for moving into an understanding of how untamed and uncivilized our faith is to be. But it's a book called The Barbarian Way by my favorite author, Erwin McManus. Those are 2 great resources, Wild at Heart and The Barbarian Way. Go check it out. Here's my challenge, guys. It's very, very simple, and then I'm going to send you out today on a high note, is do something. Do something. I don't care what it is. I don't care where it is do something to put yourself in the role of servanthood, because it's the path of servanthood that is going to lead you to your next awakening to become what God's created you to be. Do something, serve someone. Okay, there, I've added to it already. Do something, serve someone. And this is going to be something you're going to have to just go make yourself to do. And guess what? The longer you live, if you're currently single, okay, you have the most time you're ever going to have right now, okay? If you're newly married and you don't have kids yet, guess what? You currently have the most time available to you that you're ever going to have. If you just had a kid and you've only got 1 kid, guess what? You currently have more time now than you're ever going to have if your family keeps growing. If you just had 2 kids, if you just had 3 kids, listen, time continues to get short. And I can remember so often when we were starting Pub Theology, I would talk to somebody and say, hey, we really could use some people to serve and to be a part of what we're doing with Pub Theology, which is the ministry that I started that reaches out and does events in bars. And people would say, oh, man, Darren, I'd love to serve, but yeah, I got the kids and we've got bedtime and stuff. And we're talking about a once a month event, one night at a bar for a couple hours to serve people, to talk to people, to hear their stories, and to let them know about Jesus. I can't, man, Daron, it's crazy at work right now. And it'd be funny because it's like people would talk to me like I didn't have any understanding of that. Like I couldn't get my mind around the fact that at that point, I had 3 kids, right? I had like 3 jobs and 3 kids. Like I had a lot too, but somehow I made time to do it. And I'm not saying that I'm like the great response or the great like example here. I'm just saying those moments hit me that it's like, you don't just find time to do the things that are most important in your life. You have to make it. For maybe for you, it's coaching. You're like, you know what? I don't know where I could serve, but I love sports. Okay. Well, I'm not saying you have to go serve in a soup kitchen or go to a bar. What if you just started coaching the next generation of kids? Find a little kid soccer team that your kid's on. And guess what? There might be kids on that team that don't have a dad, or they's not around, or they're in a tough time and they need a mentor. They need somebody to walk next to them. Maybe it is serving in a soup kitchen. Maybe it's being Santa Claus at the mall. I don't know. I don't even know where that thought came from. That was not even close to a good illustration. It's live. Hey, we're live here. Okay. I don't know what it is. Here it is. Do something to serve someone. If you are looking at your life right now, you're going, man, I feel like I lack purpose and I lack meaning in my life, then begin asking God to do an audit of your life and find out, is there anything I do on a weekly basis that is solely for someone else's benefit? And if there's no in your life where you're serving, you have found your next step to unlock purpose and meaning in your life. Because it's the path of servanthood that leads you to awakening experiences that take the next step to seeing you become who you were born to be. Because that's where rubber meets the road. You can go through the spiritual DNA course. You can listen to all the podcasts. And you can go, I want to be awakened to become who I was born to be. And I want to figure out who God's uniquely made me to be and blah, blah, blah. I'm in there and I want to do it. Well, guess what? Where that actually gets manifest, where that actually gets practiced, it's in serving other people. Because you were created to be a servant. So don't make it too complicated. Take what we learned today from this interview, conversation with Mitch Davis, and do something to serve someone, and you will start the next awakening experience. Gosh, it's good to be with you guys each and every week. Would love to hear from you. If you got questions, reach out. Daron at blackbirdmission.com. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram. Just search Daron Earlewine. On Facebook, I have a personal page, and then I have a speaker page. Personal page, you might see more pictures of my dog, maybe football. Speaker page, you're going to see more quotes and podcast links and stuff. But would love to connect in a deeper way through the podcast and through social media. Have a phenomenal week. I love you. It means the world that you listen to the podcast. And until we talk again, don't forget these 3 things. God is for you, not against you. God is near you, not far away. And God has created you on purpose and for purpose. We'll talk to you next time, right here on the Daron Earlewine Podcast.